Hello everybody and welcome to our review of A Tale of Two Spoilers! Spoilers! This episode answers so many questions that I cannot emphasize anymore how spoilery this is. So beware, you have been warned.
July 13th was a very interesting day for not one, but two fandoms.
Steven Universe and Gravity Falls collided for one night only into an explosion of fandom feels. It was chaos, and there was fire. Rebecca Sugar and Alex Hirsch must have plotted together to torture us. It's a conspiracy! A conspiracy, I say!
Yeah, right. Two different people from two different networks coming together for an evil plan? That's about as likely as the show referencing a line in one of our reviews.
I think Seuss has some secret fanfic of him and Stan hidden somewhere in his room.
I'm hoping all this aligns exactly with my fanfic, Stan.
Bang! Mind blown.
So we're going to be talking about both of the July 13 premieres, this one first and Steven Universe second, and this episode is going to be a fascinating one to talk about. After several months of nothing happening in Gravity Falls land, they came back on the scene with this 30-minute long commercial-free beast of an episode, which once again proves that Gravity Falls' spoiler count only goes up and up with each episode we talk about on this channel.
This episode was brilliant. It answered so many questions and added so many more at the same time, and I'm excited for the next upcoming ones as well. In the promo for the next two, we actually get to see a glimpse at Bill! Bill is my all-time favorite character in Gravity Falls, and I am really excited to see him again. We will never get tired of this delightful demon Dorito.
Okay there, slow down. Let's take this one episode at a time.
Demon Dorito.
So, without further ado, let's talk about A Tale of Two Stands. In the interest of time, I'm going to just fast forward my way through this adorable intro and then the theme song so we can get to the episode proper.
Wait.
What is it now?
Go back to photos. Go back. There! That one in the center! That used to be a pterodactyl. Now it's the author. Make of that what you will.
Oh yeah, look at that! Well, Gravity Falls always like to insert tiny details into their episodes, and trust me, we'll be getting to a few more of them in this video, but...
Anyway, all of those photos are of antagonists in Gravity Falls, and now the author is there with the antagonists. Coincidence? I think not! It's a sign!
Or, alternatively, the photos are all supposed to represent weird things that pop up in Gravity Falls, whether they're antagonists or not. And the author, at this point in the series anyway, is basically another weird thing, even if he isn't a bad one. So his photo could fit in that way.
I refuse to believe you, and nothing can change my mind.
Stan and the author immediately get into a fight, but it doesn't last long before the kids and Seuss want to know what's going on, Dipper especially. Throughout this episode, these three are going to be representing the average audience member during this thing. So the origin story begins.
In 1960-something, the younger mystery twins lived in Glassshard Beach, New Jersey, in a pawn shop.
Hot Belgian waffles!
Every day, they would go and look for adventure along the beachside. In the shot that we see, they find a boat and get some serious sunburn. As they drag it out, the three boys who seem to be school bullies start teasing them. Stanley then comforts Stanford about his six-fingered hand. I like how they used the slang from the 1960s. Neato and stuff.
Also, just so we're clear in case we aren't, Stanley is the Stan that we're familiar with, and Stanford is the author. The episode pulled the part clever, part annoying move of switching the characters' names. Stan Lee wants to become a treasure hunting adventurer alongside his brother, and it's actually kind of sweet, if not a little sad, considering how things go. Misunderstandings are going to be a major theme throughout the episode.
And one of them I actually have a theory on.
Near the end of high school, Stanford gets an opportunity to go to this really high-end college in California, and while he's excited, Stanley is sad to know that their treasure hunting vision wouldn't come true if Stanford moves away. The school wants to see Stanford's perpetual motion machine, which Stanley accidentally breaks in a fit of rage.
Or did he?
What?
Open layer stuff.
Oh come on, we need to focus.
Okay, look at what happens when he smashes his hand on the table.
This is all your fault, you dumb machine!
The grate comes off and smokes slightly. He puts the grate back on and presses in the top left screw. Now, forward to tomorrow. While Stanford is presenting his machine to the group of representatives, he pulls off the sheet.
Beneath this sheet
Now look at the grate. It's hanging off its bottom right screw. Now, flashback to yesterday. After he puts the grate back on, since it is a perpetual motion machine, it continues to move. And the next morning, it's hanging off a different screw and the machine is no longer moving. Pay attention to the color of electricity that flashes through it. It's the color blue. Who else do we know who favors the color blue and is absolutely evil in every way?
Ooh, it's the Tantibus from last week's episode.
No! Try again! Oh, for crying out loud, it's Bill! His fire's blue!
Usually when I think of Bill, I think of yellow, cause that's what he is. His blue fire isn't something that shows up too much.
Well, when I see Bill, I think of Doritos, and that doesn't show up at all. Your excuse is pitiful. Anyway, if this theory is correct, it would mean that Bill set all of this up from the beginning. He planned all of it, and he's purposely trying to break up the Pines family. And why would he do that, you ask? Well, according to other theories, since the markings on Bill's wheel are in relation to mostly the Pines family and its friends/enemies, by breaking up the Pines family, he might be able to stop them from ever figuring this out. The theory is that these people brought together can somehow stop Bill, or at least that's how I view it. By breaking up the Pines family, Bill is preventing his demise.
It's quite a theory, and I'll be interested in seeing how it plays out.
Stanford, while asking the representatives to give him a second chance, notices a toffee nut bag that was left sprawled on the ground. Toffee nuts being Stanley's favorite, or at least probably, he immediately assumes that Stanley broke his machine purposefully. He goes home and gets into a whole rant about how he did it and that he couldn't survive without him. His parents overhear, and his father throws him out of the house. He hasn't even graduated high school yet, and now he's already getting kicked out. He's crying as he drives away, and somebody give this man a hug, right? On a side note, that small baby that you see the mother carrying is likely this Shermie that they were talking about.
They're your family, Poindexter. Shermie's grandkids.
Remember those fake IDs from Not What He Seems? Well, they came from Stan's attempts to make money as a traveling salesman. All of his products were defective, and all of his commercials were funny. He wound up being banned in multiple states, having to change his name every time he moves to stay away from the law. Stanford wants to put his scientific knowledge to use and decides to start studying anomalies.
Well, he's technically studying this not as a profession. Have you ever seen his journals hanging up in Barnes & Noble? He hasn't really shared this with anyone but Fiddleford. And now Fiddleford is cuckoo.
Ah, yes. The biggest mystery of this episode, and the one deep, nagging question that doesn't get answered. What was Stanford's actual job?
The fandom may never know, just like the eluding Tootsie Pop.
Stanford believes that the anomalies in Gravity Falls are coming from other dimensions, and wants to build a portal to try and access whichever world these freaky occurrences are coming from. Say, wait a minute. A Disney XD show involving multiple dimensions and possible travel between them? Something tells me this show is somehow related to...
I'm done. I'm so done with you and this. Why did you have to make that reference? I don't even know why you had to do that. I'm so done with you.
Well, she walked out on me again. Add this to the list of things that make Leia leave the room.
That's right.
Now don't you dare make me walk out again, Maury.
Wait a minute, that doesn't sound like Leia, or look like her. And how did she teleport back in? Oh no! Let's just pretend that never happened.
What happened?
Exactly.
We have a short sequence showing Fiddleford and Stanford building the portal. And when it comes time to test it, they throw one of those human dummy things into the portal. Some rope gets caught around Fiddleford's wrist, later on going to his leg. Stanford pulls Fiddleford and the dummy out of the portal, and Fiddleford seems mentally traumatized from what he saw, which we still don't know.
And he says some things backwards. Now, my editing software actually has the ability to play footage backwards, so let's figure out what he's saying. You may recognize this gibberish from an earlier episode, Society of the Blind Eye. Fans actually did figure out how these made-up words are spelled, and they're actually in the @bash cipher. Decrypted, they spell Bill Cipher, triangle. Now, if Fiddleford is saying this stuff, this must mean that he encountered Bill inside of wherever the portal took him.
Or at least Probably.
So now we know for an almost fact that Bill is from another dimension entirely. In fact, now that I think about it, the portal even kinda looks like Bill.
I would have thought it was obvious that Bill was from another dimension, but whatever. Fiddleford says, when gravity falls, Earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye. I believe we just witnessed this gravity falling thing, so that explains Bill in the promos. It also explains Fiddleford packing up his things and leaving as the gravity began falling. He knows. Anyway, in the backstory, Fiddleford begins acting absolutely crazy. Not as crazy as in Society of the Blind Eye, but still pretty weird. He quits the project, telling Stanford that it will destroy the world. Stanford says the same thing Stanley did years back, which is, I don't need you, I don't need anybody. And then we continue.
Stanford decides that it's time to let Stanley in on what's happening, and by the time Stanley gets to Gravity Falls, Stanford has become, like so many others who study the paranormal, a paranoid wreck. He shows Stanley the portal and tells him about how dangerous it is. We find out that Stanford's hidden the other two journals and now wants Stanley to hide the last one as far away as possible. Stanley is offended that Stanford would call him over just to tell him to get away from him and hide a book. More misunderstandings break out, and they lead to a fight, ending with Stanley pushing Stanford into the portal by accident, breaking it in the process.
You know the story from there. He works 30 years to get his brother back, taking his brother's name to cover up his tracks, and using the name Mr. Mystery to pay his brother's bills as a tour guide.
I really have to give credit to how well the misunderstandings are written in this episode. They feel really natural, like things actual people would think about each other. The scene also has some other nice subtle details. We see Stanley about to burn Journal 1 and Stanford trying to stop him, and this makes sense. On one hand, Stanford does know that the journal is dangerous and can never be found, but he still feels an attachment to it and doesn't want to let it go so easily.
Look at the animation in the scene. That hand positioning is so well drawn. Bravo! This whole episode had a lot of great animation, like that focus change way back towards the beginning.
Gravity Falls in general does nice things with its animation. It can take scenes that are really hard to draw and animate them seamlessly. It's really a spectacle to look at, especially during the action scenes.
I couldn't agree more.
Now, with all this backstory, you might have forgotten that this episode is a direct sequel to Not What He Seems, but sure enough, we have those pesky government agents from that episode to deal with. They get rid of them in a really clever way too, using the ray gun from Society of the Blind Eye. But let's be honest here, at this point the terms Gravity Falls and continuity might as well be synonyms with how much past episodes get brought up anymore.
So here, Stanford and Stanley are talking in front of a mirror. Stanford tells his brother that he can stay there for the summer to watch Dipper and Mabel, but then he is kicked out and he has to give his brother his name back. It's a pretty sad scene as Stanley captures him, saying that he's basically not family to him. It then cuts to Dipper and Mabel in their room, and it seems almost as if they've switched places. Mabel's all worried and Dipper is all laid back.
This last scene, along with the one before it, make up the most powerful scenes in the episode. Dipper and Mabel ever so briefly wonder if they'll become like the two Stans this episode was named after. It's a really subtle scene, and it just ends eerily, with Dipper reassuring Mabel, but the question never really being answered. The writers have really gotten good at making these characters feel human, and in this episode it shows off more than ever. I'm really interested in seeing where the series goes from here, considering this scene could very well be foreshadowing.
I agree. This was just a really well-made episode altogether, with the emotion and the great animation. It answered so many of our questions, and I'm glad they're finally introducing the author. I'd give this episode a 5.
As far as origin stories go, this is pretty good. The characters here are stronger than ever before, and the story being told is intriguing and heartfelt. Everything that gets revealed fits right in with what we already know about Gravity Falls, and yet it still leaves us hanging with just enough curiosity to keep us going. It isn't the show-stopping energy blast that Not What He Seems was, but it's almost as good while still being more subtle and downplayed. If there's one thing I'd complain about, it's actually the length. Don't get me wrong, the episode needed to be 30 minutes long to get in everything that it needed to, but watching this a second time, I could really feel that this was a longer than normal episode, and it kind of got distracting for me. But still, it's very well paced and very well written. I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Adios! Okay, so we already have 2 Doritos, Peridot and Bill. They can't possibly have another one, right? Oh, no.